Good morning.
Hey, Peter, what's up, man?
I'm well. It's nice to meet you.
Yeah, nice to meet you. Thanks for taking a minute out.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
So, before we get into your new work and your life and music, I want to get into COVID. It really did its thing on all of us, especially the community of artists and musicians in the world. How did you get through it now that we're entering this post-pandemic era of our existence? And how has it changed the way that you do things now?
Um, Two-part answer to a two-part question. One is that for years now, um, you can see here, I'm sitting in my studio.
Yeah,
Um,
I like it that we're oscillating around. I dig it.
uh, uh, I'll try to stay still.
Yeah, no, you're fine. I got a strong stomach. I go to the amusement park with my kid all the time, so I'm good.
Okay. Um, I Years ago when I started working with uh, a number of different film composers for music for television and film. Um, I started building up a studio at home um, where I do a lot of work. I make my own records here. I rehearse here. It's my practice studio, but it's also my uh, uh, recording studio. And so when COVID hit and every single musician I knew was tooling up to record at home or be able to make videos from home, um, uh, when everybody was figuring out those basics, etc., and how they could work remotely, I was already tooled up. And so, given that everybody was staying at home and they weren't able to call television and film sessions in Los Angeles in person, um, and in New York, I did an awful lot of studio work from home during COVID. And so uh, that in all its forms kind of kept me financially sounder than I would have been if it had just been collapse of the gig economy and my income was just completely demolished. And of course, since I couldn't tour or perform in New York, I took a hit on that front. But I had some work,
Yeah.
and 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 because everybody I knew was doing their things remotely, that kind of stuff kind of increased in that period, and that helped a lot. Um, and then the second part of that um, question, and you might notice from time to time I speak a little slowly. I'm a lifelong stutterer.
Oh, it's
Um,
all good.
yeah. Um, so yeah, we didn't uh, for a year or so. Nobody worked at all, and then the year and a half after that, when some gigs were kind of popping up and venues were able to try to figure out what they had to do to make it work, there was just reams of paperwork and all this anxiety attached to any sort of attempt at playing a concert. Like I played a concert in Montreal with a beautiful singer from Cameroon named Gino Sitson. And this was probably maybe November 21, and it was in Canada. So I had two or three different apps on my phone running everything, the Canadian entrance and the CDC and blah blah blah, and the airlines. And so you'd go do these things and wonder if there was one paper paperwork snafu. If you hadn't uploaded your Vax card to a certain site, then you'd get turned away at a border, or maybe you'd miss a connection. And so there was tons of anxiety and extra legwork everybody had to do to just play a club show, much less go do a concert out of town. Um, and that's not entirely over. I have a thing this summer where there's a whole bunch of hoops I've got to jump through because it's a population that we're serving that has a bunch of immunocompromised individuals, and so there's still more complications than there used to be. But more now in the last 3 years, it's easier to just show up and play, which is it's just all these extra hoops. It just put a kind of cast a cloud of anxiety on top of everything for a long time, and that's waning now, and we're all grateful. And to that point, there's a level of gratitude among all the musicians I know that is different from pre-pandemic. The gift, frankly, of being able to do what we do is really recognized by everybody I know. There's a different kind of joy that's palpable among everybody around here.
So to add on top of that, you have a new album out. Talk to me a
I
little
do.
bit about this new project. Talk to me about how it feels to have it out and kind of, you know, to have something that's come to fruition.
That alarm is for you. Oh, turn that off. I don't know why that's going off still. Brand new record on Diskonife. It's me and Mick Rossi and Matt Moran. Diskonife is a label that me and vibraphonist, percussionist Matt Moran and I run. And it's a small little thing. It's just a way to put our records out there. And my second record on Diskonife was a duo record with pianist Mick Rossi, who's been my colleague in the Philip Glass Ensemble for a long time, and he's been Paul Simon's pianist for 20 years. And we made a record, put it out on Diskonife I think in 19. And when we did a release concert for that, we invited Matt to join us, and that was really great. And then we got right to work on planning one that'd be all three of us. And so all three of us play all kinds of different music, and we're very comfortable with heavily notated, rhythmically complicated stuff, and also all the way on the opposite side of the pendulum, with completely free improvisation. And so we improvised for an entire day in the studio with a raft of instruments. I brought, I don't know how many woodwinds. Mick had all sorts of keyboards and all sorts of percussion instruments. Matt as well, vibraphone, his Serbian bass drum, bowed cymbals, and a lot of sound effect stuff. And so we improvised for a day, and then we edited for a year, and turned these free improvisations into bigger realizations of what we had imagined. And while I was improvising in the studio, I was thinking about what else. If I was playing a monophonic clarinet line, I'd imagine it harmonized in a way that I might, if I were Roland Kirk, or if I could play an entire woodwind section at once, or playing a bass clarinet ostinato, and knowing while I was playing this acoustic thing that I was going to overdrive it, distort it, warp it later. And so play kind of improvising freely, but with this untethered imagination around it. And that was an interesting thing to do, kind of knowing that I'd have another shot at making those sounds into kind of what I intended, and letting that fuel the improvisation. And so I'm really happy with all the things we came up with, and it goes in a number of different directions, and there are moments that are just simply beautiful for the sake of being beautiful, like the power of sounds in their purer form, you know.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, I'm very proud of that record, and I'm really glad that it's finally out there, because COVID slowed it down, and then life events, and as things go.
Yeah.
And so I'm happy to have that out there, and I'm already writing the next one.
So what are you hoping the listener gets from this album?
I'm hoping that they get a, 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 a telescopic view into our imaginations, kind of like when you go to the waterfront and there's that kind of uh, binocular kiosk, and you drop a quarter in and you can look out over the water, and kind of concentrate your attention and vision and imagination for a minute, and see into kind of what makes us tick, um, in that on that day
So
on that day in that environment. So
yeah, for sure. No, I love the way you said that. So what has been kind of the key to your longevity? You've been at this for a long time. What's been kind of the key to that for you?
uh, a big thing has been flexibility, um, in that I can't pay my bills playing purely straight ahead jazz. Um, and even if I could, I'd feel like, I mean, I grew up um, at the altar of Sonny Rollins and Dexter Gordon and John Coltrane, and and Coleman Hawkins, and Ben Webster, and I could go on and on and on. And but being in New York, everybody has lots of facets on their crystals. I spend a lot of time playing 20th century music of Philip Glass and a lot of other composers, and Matt and I, Matt's one of the premier jazz vibraphonists, but in his own band, he plays only Serbian bass drum. In Slavic Soul Party, I play alto saxophone in that band, and we play um, um, primarily music of South Serbia, Macedonia, and Bulgaria. Um, and I do klezmer things, and I do Broadway things, and I do commercial things, and classical things, and freaky improv things, and modern composition. And they're all connected for me, and they are for a lot of people in our circle. And what's interesting is that almost everybody in these kind of circles in New York, we all came up jazz players, and so we, whether or not we're playing straight ahead jazz or not, the process through which we learned how to play was a jazz process, was emulating other people's sounds. Like when I was 18, I wanted to make my sound as much like Dexter Gordon as I possibly could, and that informs your sound concept. Just if you're a classical clarinetist, you maybe want to sound like Robert Marcellus, and you model your sound after that. But my saxophone sounds were built up through imitation and transcription and repetition, and so, like, building your own musicianship in a jazz way makes you flexible in a way that, I mean, I've definitely encountered classically trained improvising musicians who are equally wonderful, but didn't build their musicianship through being a jazz musician. And that gives you this flexibility that's, in my opinion, unmatched. It means like when you're approaching, I mean, it's a little related to, say, in the 50s, how jazz musicians on both coasts kind of enveloped or like absorbed Brazilian music, because on hearing and with and with a jazz and improvisers mindset, they just opened their arms and said, "Oh, this Brazilian music is new and new to us and magical, and we're going to take it in." And the underlying roots of Latin music that's been informing jazz since before 1920, probably since all the way back 1870, 1880. It's jazz language isn't exclusionary. It takes things in. It's it's open to everything. And so the kind of knee-jerk example everybody gives is that Bird loved Stravinsky. Charlie Parker had Rite of Spring on his turntable. Unsurprising, because jazz is open to all the sounds around it, either one pure sound or all the sounds at once. And so in the French harmony of even early Duke Ellington, you check out those voicings, and they're as related to turn of the century French classical music as they are anything else. It's always brought it all in.
So talk to me a little bit about, what is it that you love the best about being a professional musician? What is it that fuels you every day to do this?
It's a great question and an easy one to answer, in that when I'm playing, and either alone or with my kids or with my friends or on the bandstand, just projecting, I feel like I'm incomplete without projecting my own sounds. Like I have my person, I have my body, I have my being, I have all these physical things, and I'm not complete without that sound radiating out in the best way I can do it. And I might be doing it on a flute or a saxophone or a clarinet. But in those moments, I'm more complete than I am without it. And that's part of what makes making music with my colleagues and friends magical, and also making music with my kids. That really brings it all in, when there's not just friends but family, and you're doing this thing together, and you're in your being, you're in your body and out of your body, projecting these sounds into our collective space. If that's not too out there, everything is vibrating, and when you can vibrate with it, it feels even better.
Yeah, for sure. So let me ask you this: if anyone wants to pick up the new album, learn more about any previous work from you, live shows, where's the best place for them to go?
Diskonife.com, DISKONIFE.com, and that's got everything from me and Moran and Mick Rossi, and we put out a record this year of our great friend Darrent Johnston, Bay Area trumpeter, and you can find it all there. Or you can search Peter Hess at Bandcamp. and there's stuff all over the place.
Right on. Peter, hey, thank you for opening up about the project, giving us your thoughts on music. I really appreciate your time today.
Absolutely my pleasure.
And before you go, I'd love